Oh, hey friends. My name is Eric, as most of you probably know already, and I just got this brand new table saw, so I figured I would do a technique video to show you guys how to align your table saw blade and do any minor adjustments that need to happen so that your blade is cutting not only clean and square to the fence, but parallel to the miter slot, so that you can adjust all of your cross-cut fences to that as well. So let's do a quick dive into it. Now, we can get as technical and precise as we want when we're adjusting these components in the table saw, but the reality of the situation is we're cutting wood, we're making furniture, so it doesn't need to be engineering building the Eiffel Tower precise. All it needs to be is within about a thousandth of an inch, and that's going to be more than accurate enough for what we're doing as woodworkers on these machines. So I've got a square, a nice accurate square. We've got a wrench of some kind and or some kind of Allen wrench in order to adjust the mechanisms in the table saw to align everything. So let's dive into what those mechanisms are real quick. Now, at its most basic, all a table saw is a sharp spinny thing that's rotating, that's held in this contraption underneath a saw, and that contraption is bolted to the top of the table saw. So in order to adjust this to make sure that it's parallel to this, the miter slot, we need to figure out how that's actually anchored to the table. Now, in this particular saw, that's done by adjusting the 4 bolts at the corners of the cabinet and adjusting the tabletop to make sure that this blade is parallel to the miter slot. That is a relatively abnormal way to do this. In most saws, the trunnion, which is the thing that actually holds the motor in place, has an adjustment bolt at the front and the back you can loosen, and then you can adjust the entire trunnion system until it's parallel with the miter slot. Either way, whatever your saw is, make sure that you find that out, because that's the only way to make sure that your blade is aligned with your miter slot. Now, I do just want to show you underneath the table here, as I said before, we've got one bolt here, we've got another bolt here, and then way at the back corner there on either side is the same. So if I need to adjust the blade to the miter slot, I'm gonna loosen those 4 bolts, and then I can actually twist the entire tabletop until the blade is aligned with the miter slot. Now, I've already taken care of adjusting this blade to the miter slot, so I'm just gonna show you what it actually looks like once those alignments are made and what level of accuracy we're looking for. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my sliding square, I'm gonna set it into the miter slot, and I'm gonna adjust this until it just kisses one of these teeth out here. Now, with lateral pressure on my sliding square, you can hear that tooth just kiss the edge of my square. I'm gonna take this same tooth, I'm gonna rotate it to the back, I'm gonna do the same thing, and I can hear it just kiss the edge of the square, which tells me that from the front to the back, this blade is running exactly parallel to my miter slot. So now that I know my blade is properly aligned, I need to align my fence so that it's also parallel to the miter slot to make sure that the fence is running parallel to the blade. So, I'm gonna slide this in. I'm gonna lock my fence down some arbitrary distance, doesn't really matter what that distance is, and then I'm gonna adjust my square till it's just kissing the fence, lock it in place, and then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a look at the distance from the front to the back, looks pretty close to identical. Now, one thing you may want to be on the lookout for is if your square is touching at the front of the fence and there's a micro gap at the back of the fence, what that may be telling you is that your fence is ever so slightly skewed away from the blade. And that's okay. Some woodworkers actually do prefer that setting because that helps lower the chances of the wood binding on the back of the blade and kicking back at you. Personally, I like having my fence to be exactly parallel to the blade, but that's just a personal preference. You can set your fence however you like. If you do want to set that gap, I would recommend having a gap no larger than about a 64th, maybe about the thickness of a piece of paper at the back end of your fence. Now, just like with your trunnion system for the blade, every table saw is going to have its own adjustments for the fence. On this particular table saw, all I have to do is loosen 1 or 2 bolts on the interior of this fence locking system, and that way the protrusion when I lock the fence down is going to force it slightly one way or the other. So that's that, friends. It's really a very simple process, and it's not something you have to worry about all the time. Maybe once a year, every other year, something like that, or until you notice that there's burn marks on the back of your wood as it exits the cut through the blade, or you're getting any pinching from the fence to the blade itself. So just something to bear in mind, and I wanted to give you that information to make sure that your saw is running cleanly and safely. And if you want any other tips like this, if you want more information like this, leave something down in the comments. Let me know what you want to learn. I'm trying to really focus this channel more on the educational nowadays rather than the project based. So let me know what you want me to cover, whether it be machine maintenance, hand tool work, joinery techniques, etc., etc. Thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all on the flip.